When my mother married Richard, I didn't just gain a stepfather, I gained a stepbrother. Ethan was 2 years older, effortlessly charismatic, and had the kind of quiet confidence that made people gravitate toward him. We weren't close at first. He had his life, I had mine, and we treated each other with polite distance, just two strangers bound by marriage. But that changed over the years. It was in the little things, how he always seemed to notice when I was upset, how his voice softened when he spoke to me. He had this way of looking at me, not in a way that was obvious or inappropriate, but as if he saw something no one else did. I told myself it was just my imagination, that I was reading too much into things. After all, he was my stepbrother. Nothing more. Still, the tension was there, humming beneath the surface. At the time, I was in a relationship with Daniel. To outsiders, we seemed perfect together, but behind closed doors, it was different. Daniel was inattentive, always distracted, his love feeling more like an obligation than something real. He was present, but absent in all the ways that mattered. Ethan noticed. One evening, after a particularly cold argument with Daniel, I found myself on the back porch, staring at the dark sky, wrapping my arms around myself. I didn't hear Ethan approach until he spoke. Rough night? His voice was low, careful. I forced a smile. You could say that. He leaned against the railing beside me, the space between us feeling both vast and dangerously close. You don't have to pretend with me, you know. That was the thing about Ethan. He never asked questions outright, never pushed, but he always left just enough space for me to fill in the silence. And I did. I don't even know why I stay with him, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. Maybe because it's easier than starting over. Ethan exhaled, long and slow. Easier doesn't mean better. I turned to him then, and for the first time, I didn't look away. In the dim light, his expression was unreadable, steady, knowing, like he had been waiting for me to realize something I wasn't ready to admit. A beat passed, then another. The moment stretched, thick with something unspoken. I told myself to look away, to break whatever was happening before it could take shape. But I didn't. It was Ethan who finally shifted, clearing his throat as he looked back toward the night sky. You deserve more than this, he said simply, before pushing off the railing and disappearing into the house. I stood there long after he was gone, heart pounding. I should have ignored it. I should have forgotten that moment ever happened, but I didn't, and I knew, deep down, neither did he. The night it happened, I told myself I had no excuse. Daniel had left on another business trip, though at this point, his absence felt more like routine than an inconvenience. We barely spoke beyond necessity, our conversations reduced to empty pleasantries and unspoken resentments. I should have felt something about it, sadness, anger, even relief. Instead, there was only numbness. Ethan was in the kitchen when I walked in, leaning against the counter with a glass of whiskey in hand. The dim lighting cast long shadows across the room, making everything feel softer, quieter. Couldn't sleep? He asked, his voice low. I shook my head, moving to the fridge just for something to do. You? He exhaled a short, humorless laugh. Too much on my mind. I hesitated, fingers grazing the cold handle. Like what? His gaze met mine, and in that instant, the space between us felt unbearably small. There was no pretense, no carefully constructed distance. Just the truth, hovering on the edge of something dangerous. You know what, he said simply. The air thickened. My pulse quickened. I should have walked away, made an excuse, laughed it off. Instead, I stayed rooted in place, heart hammering. You shouldn't say things like that, I murmured. Why? He took a slow step forward, his voice unreadable. Because it's wrong? Yes. That was the answer. The only answer. But the word lodged in my throat, tangled with everything I didn't want to admit. Ethan set his glass down with deliberate ease, never breaking eye contact. I see the way you look at me. My breath hitched. Ethan, tell me to stop. Another step. Tell me you don't feel it, and I will. I opened my mouth, but no words came. Because I couldn't say it, I felt everything, and then, suddenly, he was close enough that I could see the faint shadow of stubble along his jaw, the way his breathing had deepened. close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from him, warming the air between us. His fingers brushed my wrist, tentative, testing. A question without words. I didn't pull away. The first touch wasn't planned. It wasn't dramatic or rushed. It was slow, uncertain, his fingers trailing up my arm, leaving a path of fire in their wake. His hand cupped my jaw, thumb grazing my cheek, and for the first time in a long time, I felt awake. Then his lips were on mine. It was soft at first, almost hesitant, as if waiting for me to pull away. But I didn't. Instead, I leaned in, fingers gripping the fabric of his shirt, anchoring myself in the moment. A sharp inhale. A quiet, shattered sound from my throat, then reality crashed in. I pulled back, breathless. This is a mistake. Ethan searched my face. Then why does it feel so real? I had no answer. Only the weight of what we had just done, and the certainty that it wouldn't be the last time. Days passed, but Ryan's presence lingered, etched into my thoughts like ink that refused to fade. I tried to dismiss it as temporary, a fleeting emotional response to loneliness. But that explanation felt hollow. The truth was harder to swallow. I missed him, his attentiveness, his warmth. Things Mark hadn't offered in years. Then came the message, "Hey, I'm in town for a few days. Want to grab coffee?" I stared at the screen, fingers hovering over the reply. I told myself it was harmless. Coffee didn't mean anything. But deep down, I knew I was teetering on a dangerous edge. Sure. Tomorrow? I typed, then hit send before I could second-guess myself. We met at a small cafe, tucked between old bookstores and tree-lined sidewalks, the kind of place where no one asked questions. Ryan was already there when I arrived, leaning back in his chair, fingers wrapped around a steaming cup. "You look different," he said as I Saturday lighter. I smiled, trying to ignore the heat rising in my chest. Maybe I just needed fresh air. We talked about everything, his classes, my work, memories of family trips. His laughter was easy, his eyes never drifting from mine. With Mark, conversations had become mechanical. With Ryan, they felt alive. Time slipped by unnoticed. When we stepped outside, the sky had shifted to dusk, a soft golden haze painting the horizon. We stood in silence, neither of us moving. "You okay?" he asked, voice low. I nodded, though the knot in my chest said otherwise. "Just tired." He reached out, fingers brushing mine. "You don't have to carry everything alone." Those words, gentle, sincere, broke something open in me. For years, I'd buried my feelings beneath duty, beneath appearances. But standing there, feeling the warmth of someone who saw me, I couldn't pretend anymore. "I don't know what I'm doing," I whispered, eyes stinging. He stepped closer, the space between us vanishing. "You don't have to know. Just be honest with yourself." I should have pulled away. I wanted to. But instead, I stood frozen, torn between guilt and desire, between what was right and what felt real. Then, in a moment that felt inevitable, he leaned in, not forcefully, not rushed, just a gentle tilt, seeking permission. I turned my head, heart pounding, breath caught in my throat. "We can't," I murmured. Ryan nodded, stepping back. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to." "No," I said quickly. "I'm the one who's sorry." The silence between us was heavy, but not bitter. Just real. He offered a small smile. "I'll see you around." As he walked away, I stood alone under the dimming sky, every nerve alight with what almost happened. The line had been crossed, not physically, but emotionally. And I knew things could never return to how they were. Worse still, I wasn't sure I wanted them to. The house was quiet again, but a different kind of quiet, one that felt watchful, loaded. Every corner seemed to echo with questions I didn't want to answer. After that evening with Ryan, I couldn't meet my own eyes in the mirror. Not because of what had happened, but because of what I wanted to happen. Mark returned from his business trip 2 days later, suitcase thudding against the hardwood floor like a final punctuation mark. He barely looked up from his phone. "Flight was long," he muttered. "What's for dinner?" I stared at him, numb. In his world, nothing had changed. In mine, everything had. "Takeout okay?" I asked. "Fine," he replied, already scrolling through emails. Whatever's easy. Easy. That was Mark's language now. Efficiency over intimacy. Routine over real connection. Later that evening, as he sat in the den half watching a sports recap, I stepped outside onto the porch, phone in hand. Ryan's name sat at the top of my recent messages, untouched since our coffee. I hovered over it, debating. My thumb trembled, heart caught between longing and loyalty. Then came a vibration. A message from Ryan, just checking in. Hope you're okay. Simple. Unassuming. But it unraveled everything I'd been trying to hold together. Before I could respond, Mark appeared behind me, drink in hand. Who's that? His tone was casual, but his eyes narrowed slightly. Just a friend, I answered too quickly. He stepped closer, glanced at the screen, then back at me. Ryan? Silence. You've been seeing him? His voice was low, tight. Not angry, yet, but no longer indifferent. I swallowed. No. He came by for his things. That's all. Mark stared, the gears turning. He wasn't a man prone to emotion, but I saw it then, a flicker of something. Jealousy? Suspicion? Fear? Funny, he said slowly. He didn't mention that when I talked to him yesterday. The floor dropped from beneath me. I felt it in my chest, the collapse. Ryan had spoken to Mark. And he hadn't told me. Mark watched me, reading everything in my face. I trusted you, he said, more wounded than I expected. But maybe that was a mistake. I tried to speak, to explain the confusion, the loneliness, but the words stuck. Because deep down, I had betrayed something. Not physically, but emotionally. And Mark knew it. He walked back inside without another word, the door closing with a hollow thud. I stood there, cold air biting at my skin, my heart in ruins. In that moment, I realized, infidelity isn't always about actions. Sometimes, it's about the heart, what it yearns for, where it drifts when no one's looking. And now, every choice I made next would define not just my marriage, but who I truly was.